So this whole study is really Eric's idea. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you came to find this? And
So actually, I probably can throw Helen on the spot, Helen Hauser. So Helen and I co-taught the adult Bible study this year, which was a lot of fun. And Helen, during that study, has come back and forth saying, "Oh, I saw that on the Chosen. Oh, we really need to check out the Chosen." And finally, she said it enough that okay, that's fine. If we get a chance, we're going to do a study on the Chosen. So anyway, so we got to the point this summer and we had a break, and I asked Pastor Ben, would this be possible? And yeah, so here we are. And the good thing is, just a little bit of background without any kind of spoiler alerts, but the nice thing is the Chosen, as well as a lot of the accompanying material, you can find in both print and electronic version, has the ability, is very non-denominational. So I was a little bit concerned, which is the other reason I wanted to invite Pastor Ben. And I even got his mother Marsha. I got the bonus as well.
And Vicar Natalie.
And Vicar Natalie, yeah. So I'm
Seminary
completely
grad.
covered. So if there's anything that is completely outside of normal biblical, that's. But no, I wanted to kind of make sure that this wasn't going to be some, I don't like to call it propaganda, but every once in a while you can get some interesting spins on what is biblical. So I was a little bit concerned about that. From the couple of episodes that I've watched so far, I haven't seen that. So hopefully that continues. But if not, we have plenty of seminary trained individuals that can point us in the right direction otherwise.
But I think that being said, we shouldn't claim that this is a biblical narrative either. Some feedback I had from somebody was, there's stuff in there that isn't in the Bible. And
some drama.
so, yeah, I think that there, we also can't watch it and say all of that is in the Bible.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
Compared to I think it was 15 years ago, there was a movie called The Gospel of John, where it essentially took the text
of John,
and
right?
just read it.
Hi, come
but-
on in.
Hey,
but
come on
act-
in.
But acted it out, and so that was pretty much, what it was. But this, from what I've heard about this, and I know my brother has watched a fair amount of this, is he said that it takes the stories and then kind of delves into the things that we all wonder about, like we heard about the guy who got healed.
Thank you.
In the sermon. Well, what was his life like before that encounter with Jesus? And they sort of fill in some of that with speculation based on cultural norms.
And what they know about the time too.
Sure,
They
yeah.
don't know about this man's life, but they do
Wow, we
know
might have to get a
generally
bigger
what it would have
location
been
next
like
time.
for
That's
someone.
awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the genre of historical fiction, but it's teaches biblical
I know.
principles.
It's awesome.
well, and
That's what
you
I
find
understand, too.
even in some very, very like the Passion of the Christ, what you find is really more of kind of like a mishmash of different. If you're looking for a true gospel story, the Gospel of John is an exception because it really follows that one narrative. But with 4 gospels, 3 that agree on a lot of stuff, and 1 that kind of does its own thing, the Mermaid Gospel, John, to try to weave in all of our most beloved stories can be difficult, or most beloved aspects of certain stories can be difficult because there are some details that seem to differ. And there's good reason for that. We can get into all that. But I'm guessing what we'll find. I haven't seen The Chosen. Maybe raise your hand if you have.
I've seen one.
I've seen 2 episodes.
I saw the first season.
Claire, what have you seen?
That was a good
I've
recommendation.
seen most of the first season and some of the second.
I don't remember any of that.
Yeah, there was everything. You were asleep.
Okay, apparently you 2 slept through it. And Claire stayed up and watched it.
Well, we've got the bright lights on. Hey, y'all, we're welcome. Glad you're here. What I'm guessing that we'll find is some of that, where it's like, wait, does that go with that story from that gospel, or it's like, is that detail included in all the gospels, or what? So that's why we're going to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, but probably about 20 to 25 minutes of
Yeah.
show.
Mhm.
Hit pause when it makes sense, and just kind of talk through, like, what are we seeing? What are we hearing? Is this surprising to you? I've got it on pretty good authority that this first episode is the worst one.
Yeah.
That's what Helen said, but I actually enjoyed it. So,
Okay,
so hopefully,
okay.
hopefully,
Any new movie or TV series, it takes them a while to kind of
Yeah.
get their flow.
It's like the
It
pilot.
took
Yeah.
a while to get into it and to figure out who was who and to get used to their personalities. Their
Okay.
personalities are interesting.
Okay,
Let's jump in then.
let's do that.
Should I get the lights to make the screen?
Yeah.
Give me, yeah, go ahead. That's cool.
ooh, I wonder what's it gonna look like in the owl cam now.
Yeah, this is gonna be weird.
Spooky.
So we've got seasons or episodes 1 and 2. Great. All right. Well, I heard a request in the room to maybe go through and try to figure out who the heck are all these people. So, who do we know for sure? Nicodemus. All right.
Nicodemus.
Okay, so do we know what Gospels Nicodemus shows up in?
John.
That's a pastor question.
The Gospel of John only.
Stephen knew.
Okay, so we met Nicodemus. Is he influential, powerful? For sure.
Big shot.
Raising
Yes.
him as teacher of teacher.
Yeah, they're kind of, yeah, they're really sucking up to him quite a bit.
He's not necessarily that elevated though.
Well, it says
Compared
there's a
to-
leader of the.
Compared to other new rabbis,
Hmm.
he's been around a while, so.
Yeah. Who does he seem subservient to?
The Romans.
The Romans.
Columbus.
You get away with anything. All right, so this guy Quintus up here, he wound up opening the door for a young man. Who was that?
Matthew.
Matthew.
Matthew gave this person a ride in his cart. He had
Matthew
very
got a
He
ride.
snuck it right in
Matthew
the car.
got a ride.
Yeah, Matthew's the young guy.
He stepped on the tongue, right?
Yeah.
The guy who was trying to stay undercover because he knew if people recognized him,
Oh,
he would be,
Unwelcome.
yes,
right.
Because he's the text.
since he's a collaborator.
Yeah. And he had very fine clothes, and he's clearly been taking some off the top. And he doesn't want people to see him out in public.
And you could tell he doesn't live with the regular people because he couldn't stand the smell of the streets.
How do you give his shoes up?
Really goes through it. He's a little bit on the spectrum. As
Oh.
time goes by, you'll see that
Okay.
his personality. So when you see the things about the dirt on him and all of that, he's a bit OCD,
Okay.
and so that'll develop. Watch for that.
I wonder if that's drives some of his separation from.
Somebody there at church speaking. This is Grace Lutheran.
Okay, sorry, go ahead. Was there a comment on Zoom?
No. I was just trying to figure out who was talking. On our screen, all we say is, it says Grace Lutheran talking.
Oh, they can't tell which one
Who
of
in
us.
the room?
is-
Oh, I see Simon, Andrew, and Matthew.
Yeah, that's right.
But when you guys are talking, we don't, unless we recognize your voice, we don't know who is speaking there in the room.
Oh, yes.
Let's focus on whoever is talking, but there's quite a few of us around this table.
So maybe you just say your name first.
Okay.
You want to?
So at the end there, we had Simon, I suppose, and Andrew.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
They were brothers.
Simon was doing the fighting?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
His face looked thinner on the show. Okay,
That might have been poetic license. We don't know what his pastimes were.
this is after all of his fights.
and
Well,
the,
It looked like they had a fight set up that he was getting more money bet on. And then he got up to win the money and got a surprise that the brother was there to knock him down. Another brother, a different brother to knock him down.
And so they were gonna lose his boat.
They were worried about that for sure, yeah.
So was that storyline, is that in one of the Gospels?
No.
No.
They're just trying to give everybody an idea of, what are these daily lives like before they run into Jesus?
Mhm.
And some of it obviously is speculative.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was interesting in terms of a preview of why Simon and Peter ended up leaving their boats and going and following Jesus. Maybe they were going to lose their boat.
It does add very much a practical element too. I mean, so far Matthew hasn't seemed very comfortable in his own skin or in his situation.
It shows
Simon and
Simon
Andrew
is
are
very
desperate.
impulsive,
Impulsive, yeah, which he
which
is.
carries on through
Yeah,
the rest of the Gospels.
yeah. Cutting off ears and whatnot. Do we have another page with more of the characters?
Yeah, so we just barely got a glimpse. And we'll see a little bit more of Mary as time goes on within this episode.
So was she the little girl at the beginning that the father
She
was
was a little-
comforting,
yep.
and then you saw her grown up
Yeah.
23 years later?
Yep.
And she looked rough.
From the blood.
He was accusing her of trying to kill him.
Yes.
That whole scene
Yes.
didn't make sense. I didn't get what was going on.
So that'll make a little bit more sense. I'm not gonna do the spoiler alert for those who haven't seen this yet. But that opening scene will make a lot more sense in a few minutes.
It's what, it sounded to me like that's where Nicodemus is headed,
Could
to
be,
deal with something with
could be.
Mary Magdalene.
Could
And
be.
it seems like they're implying the misguided notion of Mary Magdalene, that she was a prostitute.
A prostitute and demon, yeah. So the gospel talks about Jesus casting demons out of her. It doesn't ever actually say that she was a prostitute.
No,
That gets added on.
but it says 7 demons, I think, so people think that many demons. She was,
Or it may relate to the 7 deadly sins or something like that. Maybe he just helped her overcome her character defect. We don't really know. It's never actually specified.
Just to spice up the story.
So now she's a madman, a madwoman.
yeah, it says,
So that, the Romans bringing Nicodemus into, the red area, that's artistic license too,
What is red area? Oh, sorry.
the red area,
Yes.
your red border.
Yeah, so it's, so this
Yeah,
is,
It is poetic.
so this is outside of, this is kind of outside the Bible, obviously at this point, but I think kind of one of the big things, the reason I'm glad we kind of stopped just to kind of look through some of the characters is just to get kind of an idea of, some of the background personalities and, where people kind of fit within the spectrum. So we met Shemuel, who is basically the local synagogue leader
Rabbi guy.
of Capernaum. At least within the story, I'm not sure if he's ever identified. Maybe some historical documents. Nicodemus, as we know from some of our biblical reading, really does kind of believe much more into the Messiah than many of his Pharisee counterparts.
Yeah, let's pause on that for just a minute. Did anybody notice what was graffitied up on the wall when they were trying to scrub it off? Messiah will kill the Romans or destroy the Romans or something, yeah. And then I noticed that Shemuel, like his exasperated phrase was, Messiah, come quickly. So there's definitely a focus, at least in this group, on expecting the Messiah.
Right, and they also had the homeless guy asking Levi or Matthew, are you?
No.
So they're trying to portray a couple of things. One being that there is a sort of undercurrent of desperation where people want some to be they want to be rescued. And number two, that the Romans just basically meddle in people's lives and lord themselves over the Jews and take pleasure in it.
But I thought it was interesting that they had Nicodemus take on the attitude of, we are all expecting Messiah, but Messiah can't come until we have prepared and perfected ourselves.
Right.
Was that his phrase?
Well, he was saying that until we stop being so sinful, Messiah won't.
We're so sorry.
Oh,
When he was doing that teaching thing, he said,
that's why you said we're screwed.
we have-
By his
we have
logic,
to-
he'll never show up.
we have to stop disrespecting the Sabbath and stop being sinful. Messiah won't come because we're not worthy.
Which does not fit the Old Testament prophecy, so why would
Right.
that?
Well, but it goes into the way a lot of Christians even come at things too, is that we have to make ourselves good enough for God to want to help us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that lots of people fall into.
So you don't get left behind.
Oh, yeah, definitely, right.
Yeah, and I was interested too to see that the Romans seemed to use the word Jew as like a pejorative.
Yeah,
It's kind of
it was a little demoralizing.
And so that's worth keeping an eye on. I think the relationship between the Romans and the Jewish hierarchy.
So they're trying to present us with prevailing attitudes at the time, so that when Jesus is introduced, we see what he is going to correct.
Mhm.
Basically.
So real quickly, the idea of Messiah. This is my first viewing, so but I'm guessing it seems like the idea of Messiah and the way that they're going to be talking about Messiah is very much late Old Testament kind of thoughts of the Messiah, first of all, is going to rid us of our corrupt overlords and crush the enemy. That was graffiti on the wall. The Messiah will come to help us first, and then maybe others, and we'll kind of see about that. The Messiah will be powerful and expects perfection. So I feel like what they're kind of setting up is that when this guy Jesus from Nazareth comes along, people start saying the Messiah, and they look at him and go, which of the boxes does he check?
Yeah.
That's not what we were thinking.
Yeah.
And they're not
Well,
without
I
precedent.
think it's fairly accurate to prevailing attitude. I mean, there are many different opinions, but all of that was kind of stewing around in the general culture at that time.
There were reasons he wasn't recognized.
Of course, yeah.
And especially for people who are suffering and oppressed. I mean, we could list out all the prophecies about Messiah, Daniel and otherwise, that kind of like the Messiah is the one that's finally going to set things straight. And it doesn't feel in the moment like Jesus is really going to do
And what's the Lord's return policy?
Messiah come quickly, but not that Messiah.
There's a sermon title.
That would be a fun one.
Do you want to preach Sunday, actually?
Yeah, expect to hear that one again.
Ready to keep going now that we
Other,
kind of got
um,
the synchronization?
What about, anything else that you noticed that you wanted to make sure to?
I thought it was kind of comical that Nicodemus was like, don't touch me, don't give me your uncleanliness, like you're ritually unclean. I'm gonna have to just do all my ritual stuff to be right after this to be clean again.
Like everybody else had cooties, right?
Right.
Everybody liked it.
Like he was like,
And that actor looks very familiar.
Yeah.
I've seen him in something.
In other Bible videos, I'm certain of it.
Full motion.
Somebody trying to say
Was
something.
there a comment online?
I think he's collecting stuff for an exorcism.
Really
oh yeah, he
about
said
the sulfur and hyssop and,
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely. Very, very, very good eye there. And again, like, he's not wrong. The law is a certain way. There is something deeply connected between outer purity and then inner purity. You can't go to the temple. You can't go into the synagogue if you've been touched by someone who's unclean or done something unclean. So he's not wrong, but then here comes Jesus and just seems to like trample all over those boundaries. And people call him rabbi. And I'm sure for a rabbi who's a Pharisee, and especially a new class of rabbi, that's going to be offensive or hard to understand.
The Pharisees, who were they, like super anal with their following the laws?
It's your kids that are.
They were so.
They didn't even play.
Explains a lot right there.
That's a great one, by the way. That Jesus basically told them that they teach the precepts of men as if they were commandments of God. In other words, you guys make stuff up and say it's coming from God. That's how we know they were. So we had a problem.
But they were the keepers of the law.
Nevertheless, the way that they interpreted the law often was actually anti-scriptural. It's completely wrong, flat out wrong.
But it's important to note that that's his job.
It is his job.
As the class of Pharisees, he's not just a teacher. He's like a keeper, defender, and explainer of the law. So it's important to him to get things right, even if it's more traditional than it is biblical.
And I think legend has it that there were as many laws as seeds in a pomegranate, like 300 something. So he had a lot to keep up with.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why he's so grouchy.
Yeah.
It's the tradition over time. They started with everything in the Old Testament, and then whenever there was a gray area, people would say, well, what does it say then about this?
It needs
So,
more rules.
and so the rabbi would say, well, I guess we have to fill in that gap. So over time, you get
It's like the federal
300,
bureaucracy,
600.
yeah.
Yeah, in the Jewish tradition,
Isn't that
correct me if I'm wrong, because you knew a rabbi, there's rabbinic tradition, which is in addition to their actual
Right.
And
Old Testament scripts.
there's much more of that than actual scripture.
There you go.
It's generations of interpretation. Yeah.
But not to simply blast some of the other religions within our own. We have a lot of tradition as well that is just as
Sure. Yes.
So
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, 2 Timothy 14:12 says you have to wear your green stole during.
That was
Okay, I'm gonna have to be done pretty soon. How do y'all feel about timeline?
how far are we into this episode here? Eric?
yeah, so we are about we're probably about 40%. It's about 45
But that
minutes.
was 2 episodes, right?
No. I mean, what you were seeing on the screen was 2 episodes long.
Right.
But this episode is about 45, 47 minutes, somewhere in there, and we're at about 22.
Okay, so we've got about half of this episode left.
Yeah, so we're about 50% through this particular one.
And did you say next time we get together, we can go through that angel, so it's all on one, we'll be able to hear it better and see it better? And we'll
Yes,
be all
yes.
Yeah.
And
I'll work with Whitewater to make sure we have enough logins, so that's not a problem.
and to make sure we can use the OWL speaker. It's a really great speaker, but it just wasn't.
Yeah, we'll kind of work through that. I can even bring in some computer speakers too, so.
Demons out. Get him out.
All 7 of them. You need some hyssop
Yeah, I was gonna say.
and some wormwood.
But if you have to go, I mean, I can continue on and we can, watch the rest of this episode. I think we had talked about going till 8, if I'm not mistaken, so.
Is everybody good with that?
It's fine.
I think it's good to finish this episode.
Yeah, I think you should.
Even
And
if some
we
of the
should-
discussion.
At least the 20 whatever minutes to get through episode.
Yeah, we may have a very
Right.
abbreviated discussion at the end then.
Maybe, so.
Actually, this episode's probably not gonna have a lot of meat to discuss because it's introducing
It's all
the world and the people. Yeah.
And to be fair, that's a good point, Mark, because there may be more just sort of assumed as we hear backstory, which we don't really get much of in the Gospels. I'm at 24:21. Where are you at?
I have to find it, I'm sorry. Too many little things. Alright, I got a commercial, so let me finish my commercial.
This one will probably have one in a second. We'll try it.
Alright, so I'm at 24:16. You said 24:21?
Go ahead and press play and let me know when you're at 21.
So, everybody was calling her Lily in the bar there.
You know, Lilith is, and so it's short. Lil.
Yeah, I think she had just assumed another
That's the name.
identity because she was too ashamed of her past. But I really liked how they showed there too. It wasn't, the rumor apparently was she was a prostitute, but they were showing it's not necessarily the case. She was assaulted.
Yeah, she was.
And that just built the reputation that she couldn't have any way to live down in that society.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I am gonna sneak out, but thanks everybody. If you don't mind
Thanks, babe.
ending the meeting
No problem.
when we're finished. Thank you. Bye everybody on Zoom. Bye.
Hi,
Goodbye.
But importantly,
Stephen, I'm totally agreeing with you is that she wasn't a prostitute, she was assaulted, and it looks like, you know, the story, she's a victim.
Yeah, what I really like about ones like this, if they're done well, is we've heard the gospel story so many times that sometimes it just kind of goes in one ear and out the other, or we focus on one particular verse, but we don't think about what was it really like.
Have a good night.
You know, like the guy
See you
said
guys.
getting to, you know,
Next time we'll bring some
live in
snacks.
that society and encounter Jesus. And so, you know, I've seen things like this that are not well done, where the acting is pretty low grade, the camera work is not really good, but this looks like it's very high quality and really immerses you in the story so that, you know, sparks your imagination.
What
right,
do you
but
think What do you think about the bird that brought her away from the edge of the cliff?
once again, all this stuff is speculative.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't say that happened. We don't know how and when Jesus actually met Mary. It does say he cast out 7 demons, from whom he cast out 7 demons. That's stated. Here's what's really interesting. This woman, Mary Magdalene, is the exact same woman who's the first person he appeared to after his resurrection.
Right.
So she was very important to him. And we'll notice that, and again, we don't know that she was under an assumed identity either, but the point that they're making here is that Jesus was not deceived by such things, that he saw someone who was hurting, whereas everybody else saw someone who was, you know, untouchable, right?
Well, or as they
And-
assumed, somebody who deserved what she was getting.
Deserved,
That's
right.
what Nicodemus was saying. She's so evil, that's why all this is happening to
Yeah.
her.
they
Well,
just keep going.
he had to reconcile in his mind, why wasn't he able to cast it out? That shocked him. But the point is, though, that Jesus knew who she was and called her by name. And we are to understand that Jesus knows each of us and calls us by name. That is what we are to learn from that. But as far as, you know, I would like to bring up Nicodemus, actually. I think it's interesting the way they portrayed him as questioning things. You know, Jewish mysticism is really interesting. You know, it goes beyond their traditional Torah or whatever. A lot of them do ask questions and want to understand the nature of God. And we see him as one who sneaks away to meet with Jesus because he sees something special in him. And so we don't know what questions he might have asked his wife, but we certainly can. It is realistic that he probably questioned a lot of things and really, really wondered over the nature of God and saw something very, very special and unique in Jesus and was drawn to him for that reason.
Good insight.
Amen.
Somebody say something?
Were you talking out there, Barb?
That was
Yeah.
an amen, she said.
Ah, good.
Stephen's comments.
No, very insightful, very insightful. Anybody else have anything that they want to add?
Maybe someone said something about the bird. Maybe that could be seen as the Holy Spirit, like the not embodiment, but like maybe, you know, like she got distracted.
Well, I thought it was supposed to be like a sign from God that gave her hope because she was ready to kill herself, right? That's what they're showing. And it's reasonable to think that someone who had been possessed and untreated for so long and mistreated for so long might want to do that. And you know, we do know, because we know God, we know how he works. His Spirit does come in moments of despair to give us comfort and hope. So whether it happened that way or not, she probably had similar moments to that.
But I think from a filmmaking standpoint, I think they were
Symbol.
definitely using the bird similarly as a symbol of later on,
Yeah.
if they do get into Jesus' baptism and the Spirit coming down in the form of a dove, I think that was a
Deliberate.
right. But and for people that are watching this that don't have a background in the Bible, they probably
It's
wouldn't
just
pick
a
up
bird.
on that. But that's
Yeah.
kind of like a little Easter egg for
Yeah, right, the fourth.
We're gonna see that bird again, you
So
think,
so
huh?
almost like Jesus was watching over her before he even met her.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thought.
Well, and the way it was circling, and they kept just putting the camera back on it, I kept wondering at some point, was it gonna come down and sit beside her or something? But no, it just kept circling and then went off somewhere. But at least it gave her enough impetus to get away from the cliff at that point, yeah. No, I'd heard this was very, the people that made it weren't doing this for the first time. The people working on this had worked on other films, so they know how to do camera shots, how to, build interest between the characters with how they shoot it and how they have them interact in the dialogue. And you can tell it's very, very high quality work.
What do you guys think of the way that they're portraying Peter as basically a schemer? I mean, they really are, and
Yeah.
and we don't really. He is impetuous in his personality, but that doesn't necessarily show dishonesty. In fact, he seems to be pretty.
At the door.
If you've done any work with people who are below the level of being able to make things work, and how they have to work the system in every way possible just to get by, they've done a great job of showing he and his brother in doing whatever you got to do to survive and get by. So I think this is quite plausible for the rough fisherman who always jumped first before he thought, and I think I see it as quite reasonable depiction.
Maybe, but I personally know a lot of said people that would fit your description who have lived lives of poverty and desperation. And I happen to know that many of them absolutely refuse to sell their integrity and will always do what is right, regardless of how desperate they are. So I don't think that that's a really a fair statement to make about people in general who are oppressed by a system. Nevertheless, the question that's here is not his leap before you think personality, but whether he would lack the integrity in that way. It's kind of weird.
So,
I
My-
did
It's just my opinion. It's just my opinion.
I saw him get by and being a survivor. I didn't see a lack of integrity. I saw him doing what it took to survive and get by, which is what all of us do, whether we're seen as lowlifes or elites. To me, we're all the same. And, some people get caught, some people don't. But Jesus is our Savior wherever you are.
We could agree on that.
Well, and I what I liked more was just, pointing out, and, I have one brother. That's my growing up situation, so that's my point of reference. But rarely have I known people who have siblings where the siblings are very similar in person. Siblings usually get along. They sometimes squabble, but usually their personalities and approaches are different. And that difference in approach and personality, as much as the family bond is there, can cause friction too. And the fact that they're making it clear here that, and I also like too, is that because we hear all the stories about the disciples, it's easy to put them all on pedestals. and assume that Jesus picked them because they were maybe better than the other people around. No, I think Jesus picked them because they were very representative of your average everyday person with all their pluses and minuses, good points and bad points, and different personalities. And we see in the Gospels that when there were disagreements amongst the disciples, it's usually because they had different opinions of how to go about making a decision. What were we going to do next? Was Jesus moving fast enough in what he was doing towards what they hoped he would get to, or was he not? Or was he living up to the expectations of the people, or what was he really doing, and the confusion? So I think it's like we were saying before, sometimes it's hard in this movie when we don't know these people to figure out who is who. I think they're just making some choices to make them very distinct characters,
Right.
who will all transform once they become in contact with Jesus from what they were to what they will become.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I was thinking too, was, to look at Peter now within the plot before Jesus really, takes him as a disciple, and then to look again at Peter, but he was still impetuous. I mean, even at the very end, he grabbed the sword and lopped off the ear. I mean, right up till, we wouldn't even talk about, the cock crowing 3 times.
Well, and he's the one who always says, no, I'm the one who knows the right thing to do. I'm not going to betray you. I'm going to be the one who is going to stand up when the others fall away. And with the way they're portraying him here, you can see that kind of personality being very self-assured until push comes to shove and he realizes, oh, I wasn't as brave as I thought I was. I wasn't as sure as I thought I was. But yeah, it's always interesting because when you're whether you're telling a story just around a campfire or telling it via a play or a movie, you have to bring the audience with you. And that's what I'm trying to think too. It's like we're all watching this knowing we've heard this before.
Yeah, we know the end, yeah.
And they're also trying to make it so people who have never heard this before will find it interesting enough to stay with the story.
And find it relatable.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Good points. All right, it is 8:18. It is
Oh.
longer than what we had planned, but we had some technical difficulties, so thank you for hanging in
And
there.
commercials.
And commercials.
And we started that.
So we will do better next time. But thank you all for joining us. Anybody have any parting comments?
Loved the conversation. Thank you, Eric.
No problem. No problem. Thank everybody.
Thank
So
you.